Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning.
We are learning Mishna Bava Kamma, Perik Ches, Chapter 8, Mishna Zayin, Mishnah 7. Afal pi shu noisen lai. Even though he has given him the payments for wounding him, we're talking about one person who injures another person. He's made all the payments he's supposed to make. A nimchalai, he will not be forgiven from the point of heaven, from the point of doing a sin, until you actually ask forgiveness from the person. Hashem will not forgive the person until he actually asks forgiveness from the person that he injured. Meaning the point is, it's not enough just to pay. You have to also take care of the grief that the person went through, and the anguish the person went through. There's no payment for that. For that, you need to appease him, you need to ask him for forgiveness, and he needs to forgive you. Once he has forgiven you, then you can be forgiven for the fact that you have wronged another person. Meaning, any time you wrong another person, you've wronged that person. You've also committed a sin against. You've also committed a sin. You're going against Hashem's will when you hurt someone else. So the point is that the forgiveness for the sin from Hashem does not come until you gain forgiveness from the person that you injured. So you may have paid, but that's not enough. Shenemar, as it says. Now this pasuk is talking about after Avimelech had taken Sarah away from Abraham, and Hashem appears to him in a dream, and he says, "Behold, you are going to die because of the woman you have taken, and she is a married woman. But now return the man's wife, for he, referring to Abraham, is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live." That's the pasuk that we're talking about here. Now, what's the point? The point is here that this pasuk implies, I'm reading here from the way they explain, the verse implies it was not enough for Avimelech to merely return Sarah to Abraham. He also had to ask Abraham forgiveness until Abraham would forgive him so wholeheartedly that he would even pray on Avimelech's behalf. Meaning, what do you see from the pasuk? The Mishna is saying that from this pasuk you see that you're not enough just to return what you took away, pay for what you took away. You have to ask forgiveness. Where do you see that there? Where do you see that from that pasuk? The answer is because when the pasuk says, give him back his wife, because he's a prophet, he will daven for you, that's not two separate things. It's in essence what it means. It's not just, okay, give him back his wife, and then I'll pray for you. It's give him back his wife, and don't give him back his wife. Gain his forgiveness. Appease him to the point they'll even pray for you. It's not automatic that Abraham. It's interesting. What this means is it's not automatic that just because Avimelech gives back Sarah, that now Abraham is ready to daven for him, or at least wholeheartedly daven for him. The pasuk is saying, Hashem is saying to Avimelech, if you want him to really daven for you, then you need to do something more than just return his wife. You have to return his wife to the point that he'll wholeheartedly daven, pray for you. How does that happen? When you ask for forgiveness. So that's the point here. Then it says, that's the first point of the Mishnah. How do you know that you're not going to be forgiven until you ask him for forgiveness, the person that you injured or wronged? We see that from the case of how Abraham told Avimelech to return Sarah to the point and ask for forgiveness so that Abraham would wholeheartedly daven for him. Then the Mishnah says, now, how do you know that the person who is forgiving shouldn't be cruel? Meaning, okay, you have to ask for forgiveness, and we have a source for that. So now you ask forgiveness from and the source is, if this is what happened, if this is what was happening by Abraham, then you see, then this is what you need to do in order to get fully forgiven. Okay, fine. Now, how about the person who is forgiving? How do you know he should be forgiving? You know, someone who is hurt sometimes will say, I don't forgive you. And a person who says, I don't forgive you, the Mishnah calls him achzari, calls him cruel. Because that means that you don't care if you're not forgiving this person, you know this person will be punished from heaven. And you don't care about that. And that's something that even if he has wronged you, you should not want that to happen to someone. And wanting that to happen to someone who has hurt you, even to someone who's hurt you, the Mishnah says is cruel. So how do you know that you shouldn't be cruel? You should be forgiving. Shemar, as it says, Vayispalal Avraham el Elokim, Avraham daven to Hashem, Vayirpa Elokim es Avimelech, and Hashem healed Avimelech, because part of the punishment that happened to Avimelech for the fact that he took Sarah was that basically all the inner
turmoil?
No. All the inner parts of their body that would release things were closed up. And that was the punishment. And therefore, he needed healing. The healing came from the fact that Abraham davened. But from the fact that Abraham davened for Avimelech, and to the point that he was able, that because of his prayers, Hashem healed Avimelech and his whole household, who were suffering from this, who were suffering because of this, that shows you that Abraham was forgiving. And if Abraham was forgiving, that is a lesson for us, his descendants, to follow in his ways. Okay, so that's the first part of the Mishnah. You need to ask mechila, you need to ask for forgiveness, not just enough to pay the 5 payments. You have to ask for forgiveness, and the person who has been wronged should be forgiving. Now, that whole new discussion. Somebody says to his friend, it's going to sound like a very odd case, but this is the case. Same es ine, blind my eye. That's what he says to somebody. Blind my eye, katas yadi, chop off my hand. Shaber es ragli, break my leg. Okay, I'm telling you to do it. I'm telling you to injure me. Says the Mishnah, chayiv, you still have to pay. Just because he told you to do it does not exempt you from paying him for the injury. Why? Because he's not serious. No one's serious about that. No one wants to suffer like that. So even though he said it, he wasn't serious, and therefore, at the end of the day, you are liable if you had to pay him if you did it. Now, what happens if the guy, before he does the injury, meaning, A said to B, break my leg. And then B then says to him, before he does it, Amanas lifter. Are we doing this? Are you telling me this on condition that you will exempt me from paying you if I do it? That's what the person doing the injury says to the injured person before he injures him. Are you telling me to do this with the intent that you're going to exempt me from paying you? If that's what he said, that's the next case. What happens then? Chayiv. You're still obligated to pay. Even though, meaning what happened here? The person said, break my leg. Before you broke his leg, the person said, on the condition that I'll be exempt from paying. And what does he say? Yeah. He says yes. Nonetheless, you still have to pay. Why? Because, again, we do not say that when the person said yes, he was being serious. Let me tell you how they say it here. They say it here that although the victim said yes, he was presumably expressing astonishment, as in, do you really think I'm exempting you for payment? Meaning, I don't know if it means he said, yeah, like he made this this kind of sarcastic, yeah. It doesn't say that. He just said, on the condition I'm exempted, yeah. That yeah was not a real yes. What it really was yeah. Like, what do you think? You really think I want you to do this? That's how they explain it. Do you really think I'm exempting you from payment? It's like, it is a sarcastic yeah. It's a sarcastic yes. And that's the point. It's sarcastic yes. And therefore, he never exempted you. And therefore, even then, you have to go ahead and pay him. However, let's say they bring down here from Rashi, this ruling applies only where the attacker asked whether he would be exempt and the victim agreed. But the victim said explicitly, injure me and you will not be liable. The attacker would be exempt since the victim clearly exempted him. Saying yes to the question, am I going to be exempt, is not enough of an expression to say that he really means it. But if he says straight out, that injure me and you will not be liable, this is all coming from the victim, then he's actually going to be exempt. So that's the first case of the Mishnah. The first case of the Mishnah is we're talking about where someone tells another person to injure him, and under the circumstances of just saying to injure him, or when he responds to on the condition that you will exempt me from paying for the injuries, and he says yes. In both those cases, chayav, you're still going to be liable. Now, next case, kara es kasusi. The guy says, so again, A says to B, tear my garment. We're not talking about physical harm now, physical injury. We're talking about damaging property. So he says, kara es kasusi, tear my garment. Shavares kadi, break my jug. They told him to do it, and he does it. What happens? Chayiv. You're still liable. Still got to pay. Now, But just in general, this guy who we say that, in the first case, in this case, he says, do it. And we say, and you're still liable. Why? Because we don't really think you're serious. You could be in a bad mood, you could be angry, you could be whatever it is. And that's why you said to do it, but it's not serious. Okay. Now, then the Mishnah says, Almanas liftar, the same case as before. He says, before he breaks the jug, he says to the owner, on the condition that I'll be exempt. And what does the guy there say? No. He says no. Nonetheless, says the Mishnah, putter, you're still going to be exempt. Now, let's go back. Let's go step by step here. First, okay, actually, let's explain that second half. Okay, again, the case was the guy who was about to do the damage asks, do you mean to exempt me from liability? Then even if the owner says no, the part damager is still putter. Why? Because it is not unusual for a person to forgo payment for damage to his possessions. Since he already said, tear my garment, we interpret no as an expression of astonishment, as in, do you really think that I will hold you liable? His no is no. He may have said it like that, but that's what he meant. He already said, do it. And then and when he asked him, will I be exempt? He says no. That was a sarcastic no. It was a sarcastic no. Because since people will forgo payment for damage to the possession, and he did first say, tear my garment, so therefore at that point, we're really, our assumption is he means it. He means it, that tear my garment, I'm going to go ahead and you'll be exempt. Now, the only thing is that, when in his response, what did he say? He said, well, am I going to be putter? And he said, no. So he said, no. The answer is that no, we don't say that it's a regular no. It's a no of astonishment, as in, do you really think that I'm going to hold you liable? No. He didn't necessarily say that with that sarcastic, tone to it, but we assume that his no is not no to what you just said, but no, like, I already told you that you can tear it. Do you think I'm going to say, do you think, no. The no is more, do you think am I going to be exempt? Am I going to be exempt? No. You're like, no as, like, it's sarcastic no. Do you really think that I'm going to hold you liable? And therefore, in that case, it's going to be putter. Now, the first thing, and another thing that's very interesting about this case that they bring down here from the Tosfos Yontif is the following. That this case where we say, when the person says, tear my garment, or break my jug, that's all he said. And we say you're chayiv, you're still liable then, right? Because we don't take you serious. But then we take you serious enough to say that, if I say, are you gonna exempt me? And he says no, and we say no really means yes, right? This is not a regular case. This is not going to be a simple case of, I just walk over to you and say, go ahead and tear my garment. And when you do so, you're going to be chayiv. It's talking about the following case. The Mishnah refers only to a case where the owner had asked the other person to watch the property. Meaning, I asked you to watch my jug. When that person committed himself to be a watchman, he accepted liability for damage that might occur in the future. In this situation, if the owner later said, break it, he did not mean to exempt him from payment. Rather, he meant, you may break it, but you'll have to pay for it. If, however, the damager never agreed to watch the item and the owner told him to break it, the damager would indeed be exempt. Meaning, if I just go over to somebody, just go over to you and say, break my jug, the assumption is, since we're dealing with something monetary, that I mean you should break it and you'll be exempt. That's what you would mean. It's only in a case where the story starts with that I gave you the jug to watch it. You took responsibility to watch it. That means you got to watch it from damage. When I then say to you, break it, because there's someone who's already responsible for the damage, that means to say, you want to break it, but you're still going to have to pay me for it. Then, in that same case, if then you go after, if the shomer is per watching it says, I'll break it on the condition that I will be exempt. Are you telling me this, that you're going to tell that I'm exempt? Then, even then, by the shomer, we say the guy exempts him, even if he says no. So we're dealing with a very specific case in the sense of being strict to say that, when he just tells me to break it, I'm going to be liable. If you just go over to anybody and say break it, you mean break it and as break it would really imply break it and you're exempt. I told you to break it. Why would you be obligated? What are you going to tell me? I'm not serious? No. When it comes to objects, when it comes to monetary items, we would take you at face value. It's only where you're dealing with a person who already was liable to watch and liable for damages. That's when the Mishnah makes those exemptions. So again, I didn't finish reading the last words. No, I'm sorry. We're in the last part of the Mishnah. Last case. Asei chein ish ploini amanas liftar. Chayev. Here's another case. A person says to another, go and do damage to so-and-so or to his possessions. Meaning, I say to you, go over to the third person and damage his, and break his leg. Or go over to the other person and tear his garment. Amanas liftar, on the condition to be exempt, meaning I'll pay for it. I'm going to pay for it. You go ahead, you break his leg, you're not going to be the one liable, I'll be the one liable. I'll take responsibility for it. Or you go ahead and tear his garment, I will go ahead and be responsible. I'll be responsible for it. Says the Mishnah, chayev. In those cases, whether he did the damage in the victim's body or in his possessions, the person who perpetrated the injury is going to be the one who has to pay. One person cannot exempt a second person from payments that he incurs for damaging a third person. The damager must therefore pay. There's no such thing as doing that. And although, in essence, you may say, well, if I told you to do it, you're my shliach. You're my agent. You're my agent. And if you're my agent, so what you do is like I do it. And maybe I should be responsible because you're my agent. The answer is, ein shliach l'dvar aveira. There's no such thing as agency to do a sin. And being that it is a sin to go ahead and damage someone or hurt someone, damage his property or to hurt him, therefore you're not legally my agent, and just to go ahead and say that you do a damage and I'm just going to take responsibility for it, there's no such thing. No such thing. So therefore what comes out at the end is, I told you to do this damage, you got to pay for it. And what about me? Anything about me?
You're both guilty.
But what makes me guilty? I'm not paying anything here. Nevertheless, brings down here from the Rambam, the one who sent him is a wicked man because he misled his fellow and encouraged him to sin. There's not going to be any responsibility monetarily from your part. There is none. You told him to do it. He did it on his own. You didn't force him or whatever it was. You may have convinced him to do it. You may have made him think that he's going to get away with it. But at the end of the day, that's incorrect. There's no such thing as that. And therefore, you do a damage, even unintentionally, so to speak, you're still obligated. Nonetheless, because I got you to do it, I am considered a wicked person because I misled you and caused you to sin. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.
Telling someone to sin.
Because sometimes you